You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the old Options Insider Radio Network, where we break down the sometimes intimidating, sometimes impenetrable, sometimes just interesting world of crypto derivatives. We're going to talk the volume, the volatility, the SKEW, the open interest, the unusual activity, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more. My name is Mark Longo from the aforementioned network, as well as, of course, from the optionsinsider.com. Pleased to see so many of you are joining the network these days. A lot of people stuck at home, a lot of people worried about the markets, a lot of people interested in crypto. So this show is a perfect confluence of all those things. Keep those questions, those comments coming. We do love to hear from you guys. And if you like what you hear, keep those reviews out there on the platform of choice, and more people can continue to discover this program out there. We've been pleased to see so many newcomers coming in. And if you're just listening to Crypto Rundown, there's a whole network out there for you guys to discover. It's been running, 13 plus years for you guys to sink your teeth into over there. We'll keep you informed, engaged, enlightened, maybe a little bit entertained over there on the options front. You will not be wanting for options-oriented content. So wherever you listen to this fine program, make sure you upgrade to subscribe to the full network. We'll have shows coming at you pretty much every day throughout the week, which these days, we're all stuck at home, got a little bit extra time on our hands. A little more content is a good thing these days. And the crypto hot seat is a good thing as well. So without further ado, let's get right to it.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the program where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And our next guest is a returning victim of the hot seat. She liked it so much last time, she had to do it again. She is JEANINE HIGHTOWER-SELLITTO, the Managing Director of Operations over there at Gemini. JEANINE, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown program.
I'm back with you.
It's been a little while since you've been on. Last September was your last appearance when you and I chatted about overhauling and updating the plumbing of the entirety of the crypto space. Obviously, a lot has happened in the broad world and indeed the crypto space since the last time you and I chatted. A little thing like a pandemic or two has happened in between then. Of course, all the recent developments as well out there. So first off, just in general, how are you doing, JEANINE? How are you and the family doing since the last time I chatted with you? A lot has obviously unfolded since then.
Yeah, a lot really has changed. We've been working from home for, if I lost count, it might be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years now. But everything is up and running. We've done a huge amount of backup planning for our business. So we've seamlessly migrated into this COVID situation as a business. I've been pretty impressed with all the foresight that has been put into this for so long. But nonetheless, we really miss seeing each other. I miss seeing our customers. I miss feeling in the vibe of the day-to-day of being at the Gemini headquarters. And the camaraderie of my colleagues. But we're maintaining, we're doing our part as part of the global citizenry to stay home and hopefully resolve this pandemic sooner rather than later.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You guys, obviously you come from the more traditional exchange world over there on ISE in your previous incarnation there, Jeanine. But Gemini, a more recent addition to the exchange space, you guys didn't have the benefit of a decade plus worth of contingency and emergency planning. So you guys kind of had to spin this up on the fly. It sounds like things are rolling along pretty well there, Gemini, from an overall remote working perspective.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Having lived through Sandy at ISE, the transition for Gemini to remote working was much easier simply because the technology is there. We're built on a much newer infrastructure than we ever were in the legacy exchange space. So being able to work from home and being able to operate the exchange completely remotely is actually a much easier task when you're built on newer infrastructure and newer technology. So yeah, it's actually been pretty smooth for us. I think, again, it's just sort of the collectiveness of everyone's thinking that we miss, and the ability to see each other and talk to each other. So we've been doing pretty well, and I think crypto as a whole has been holding up pretty well during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, that's been interesting. We'll get to all that holding up or perhaps not in the Bitcoin breakdown in a little bit. But I'm curious, catch us up to speed. Like I said, it's been since last September, Jeanine, since we checked in with Gemini. You guys were working on a lot of interesting things, including making Gemini, effectively a one-stop shop for crypto traders and indeed crypto users. You have the front end, you're going to have the back end, the clearing, everything in between, even something on the payments front over there these days as well. So you guys have been working a lot of interesting things. Get us up to speed. What's the latest coming out of Gemini these days?
Yeah, well, just last week we had a really big announcement that we have partnered with Samsung to power their blockchain wallet, which is an actual hardware wallet that exists on Samsung phones, and for their customers in the United States and in Canada, we will actually be their partner for those customers to access and purchase cryptocurrency for the blockchain wallet. So it's a huge update for Gemini. It's a huge opportunity. They have millions of customers across North America, and they will be able to come to Gemini, buy crypto, and then transfer it to the Samsung blockchain wallet and store it actually physically on their phone. So lowering the barrier to entry for customers to use their crypto and hold their crypto and actually have ownership of it on their device right with them.
Well, that is pretty huge. Obviously, Samsung devices, pretty popular out there. I may have one or two in my own possession as we speak. So it sounds like that's going to make the crypto transition, Jeanine. People out there who maybe were on the fence, they didn't really know how to go at it, or maybe they didn't want to go through all the hassles and hurdles of going to some of the other venues. They can now get at it straight through a Samsung-type device. That's certainly going to lower the barrier to entry, Jeanine.
And that's right. And I think there's still, especially from the retail segment, there's still a lot of confusion in the space of, if I want to get into crypto, I've heard I want to hold and store my own crypto. I don't necessarily want to store it with another provider, even Gemini. For whatever reason, I want to be able to use it more directly. Samsung's building an ecosystem for cryptocurrency with the blockchain wallet. And so by this partnership, it really lowers the barrier to entry, as you've said, for customers to really know where to go, how do they store it. And once they're on the blockchain wallet, they know where to go and acquire the crypto for whatever purchases or whatever uses they might be needing it for. So it really simplifies the process for that customer.
And obviously, those processes don't take place overnight. How long of a project was this to bring Samsung to the table, maybe get them comfortable with the idea and get them comfortable with Gemini enough to allow you guys to really be, the first on the U.S. end to integrate with them?
Yeah, so Samsung Blockchain Wallet was announced just a little bit over a year ago, and we've been talking to them for almost a full year now, working through what our partnership would look like and working on the actual integration to make sure it was really smooth and seamless for the customer. So it's been something we've been working on for some time. Samsung obviously, wanting to find the most highly secure, reputable exchange in the U.S. and in Canada for its customers, because their brand is also of incredible importance to them. And so we think it's a natural fit that we've been selected and that we're going to be servicing those customers.
You guys have made a lot of additions on that payment and just accessibility front as well out there. Obviously, you have Gemini Pay. another offering on that front, trying to kind of broaden the offering of crypto away from just people who want to just trade with it day to day. We obviously love those people here on the program as well, but there are other use cases you can put this crypto to as well. Walk us through Gemini Pay, Jeanine. What is this? What can I use this for?
Yeah, sure. So Gemini Pay, and I think you're right in that the use cases for crypto extend far beyond just I want to buy it and hold it as a store of value or potential investment. I definitely want people to understand that the use cases for crypto are growing day by day. We've launched a couple of interesting things. One is a platform called the Nifty Marketplace, which allows people to buy and sell digital art and collectibles, essentially Nifties or non-fungible tokens on the platform. We've created a platform called Gemini Pay, which from your mobile phone and your Gemini app, you can actually pay for coffee, for Baskin Robbins ice cream. You can use it at major retailers to pay for goods using your cryptocurrency. And it's a really big use case for crypto to be moving into in terms of actually using cryptocurrency as many dream it could be used over time, which is actually using it as a currency to purchase real goods and services in a simple, easy way without necessarily needing to convert your Bitcoin to dollars or to other coins and find a merchant that's carrying it. You simply can just go on the app. If you have the app already, it's there. You simply scan and you can pay for a movie ticket when movie theaters open back up, buy ice cream when ice cream stores open back up, or buy coffee when hopefully coffee shops in your town are open already, and use your balances in whatever coin you have to make those purchases.
I like your optimism there, using it to buy movie tickets and ice cream. I want that world again, Jeanine, where we can all go out and just have ice cream and go to the movies and have a traditional, normal, non-burning summer. Unlike what we're all being treated to out here of late. Well, speaking of paying with things, you also mentioned you guys have also been making some moves on the stablecoin front as well with Gemini Dollar. Walk us through that. What's the reasoning behind launching an actual Gemini Dollar?
Sure. So a Gemini Dollar is a true peg of a cryptocurrency to the U.S. dollar. There's a number of stablecoins out there, but what differentiates Gemini's stablecoin are the banking relationships we have for the Gemini Dollar and the security that goes along with the Gemini Dollar. So our reserves are held at State Street. They're held at Goldman Sachs. And they're audited monthly. So customers that are using the Gemini Dollar or need a dollar substitute in a digital format can be assured that those dollars really exist and that the peg is true. The Gemini Dollar helps facilitate payments in a number of ways because it is a digital asset, meaning that it can be programmed, it can be transferred seamlessly, it can be used essentially where you would want to use dollars, but you can't because we don't have true digital dollars in the U.S. today. We have representations of credits at banks that have an earmark towards dollars, but they're not actually dollars being transacted over the internet and over transaction systems today. So the Gemini Dollar allows for that and allows for actual commerce to be done using dollar substitutes over digital platforms.
You know, a big topic in the crypto space and certainly on this program in the last couple of weeks was, of course, the big halving. Everyone was looking towards it with anticipation. What would it do for volume and volatility? What would it do to overall Bitcoin pricing? We saw some interesting things playing out. We're now in the post-halving world out here in Bitcoin. I'm curious, what was that process like for you guys over there at Gemini in the run-up to and the immediate aftermath of the halving? Did you guys see a general uptick in interest in all things Bitcoin over there and indeed all things Gemini? Did it drive a lot of perhaps new users to your platforms? And in general, what was the halving process like for you guys over there at Gemini?
Yeah, it was definitely a really busy week for Gemini, both in terms of volume and customer interest. Anytime there's really big news in the space, customers tend to wake up and pay attention to what's happening. So certainly in terms of customers, not just new customers coming to us, for which we saw a really big uptick in terms of people opening accounts and coming into Gemini and Gemini ecosystem for the first time, but also customers that had been dormant or less active in the previous months, really kind of waking back up and look at what's going on in crypto, either placing orders or maybe being ready to sell if there's a certain price limit that gets hit and they want to exit a position. So it definitely was a really busy week for us. It's exciting to see happen. It was exciting to see so much press take place. But we've had a couple of big announcements that I think have driven all of that together. Prior to the halving, we added some new coins. So that certainly garnered a lot of interest for our customer base that really wanted to come to Gemini to buy and sell some of the new tokens that we've added to the platform. We have a lot of customers that really look to Gemini to provide their safe and secure platform for trading crypto. So the fact that we added Orchid and BAKKT, which is, everyone knows is a basic attention token, Chainlink, and DAI to our platform really allowed a broader set of products to be traded on the platform, which has continued to help snowball activity on the platform in addition to the Bitcoin halving.
And one of the other interesting developments to watch out there in the crypto space and indeed the Bitcoin space over the past few months, of course, we all had the big major market rout as a result of the pandemic in March. And we had a lot of guests over that period coming on this program and expressing what we've termed in general, in aggregate, what their great disappointment in crypto. Because a lot of them came to the crypto space, rightfully or perhaps wrongly, with a viewpoint of crypto as this, at the very least, some thought inversely. I never thought there was really an argument for an inverse correlation, but at the very least, a non-correlated asset class. And they were out there using it like that and trying to tell others to use it as this portfolio diversification tool. And what we did see, of course, at the height of the sell-off, at the height of the pandemic, was Bitcoin performing like pretty much every other asset. When it all hits the fan, the old adage is that correlation tends to go to 1. And we saw that in Bitcoin as well. Massive sell-offs when the broad equities and all the commodities were selling off. Bitcoin down over 30% intraday at one point. A lot of people came away from that a little bit disheartened. Like I said, we've termed this now kind of their great disappointment that Bitcoin isn't indeed this non-correlated asset, that it does move in lockstep at times, sometimes at bad times, with other asset classes out there. I'm curious for you, Jeanine, coming from a more traditional, options and derivative space and now coming into the derivatives world, or indeed the crypto world of all things Gemini, where people have been extolling it as this non-correlated asset class for some time. What are your thoughts on that price action we saw over that time? And also, what are you hearing from the end users over there at Gemini? Were they sharing that disappointment, or maybe was this something that they expected and they ended up maybe fueling more volume for your platform as a result?
I don't get the sense that anybody was expecting the pandemic, especially to hit so hard and so quickly in mid-March. I think it was pretty surprising for most people because the COVID-19 virus had been around. It wasn't a surprise that it showed up on our shores. People have been watching the news, watching and understanding what's been happening in China. I think the momentum behind the market rout in March was surprising because when you look at it in hindsight, you can kind of see it coming, right? It really wasn't a surprise that the virus hit the United States, that it hit us so hard and impacted the global markets. And so you kind of look back and wonder, how did we not see this coming? But that being said, I don't think that Bitcoin really performed any differently than the one should have expected in the sense that this is a global market crisis. It isn't really in a normal circumstance. I mean, even gold was down, right? So, there's the same impact happening in all assets as people are trying to exit positions. They need to have cash on hand. No one knows if their business is going to survive the pandemic. No one knows what their current future is. And there was a lot of confusion in terms of the extent of what the government was going to step in, how they would step in, what amount of relief would need to be provided to support markets, prices, and the economy in general. And so it's not surprising that people were selling off all assets and not, exclusive to Bitcoin or gold or the broader markets and indexes. So that's not surprising. I think, it'll be something that's written about in the history books for a really long time, and it'll be something that's in discovery for Bitcoin and how its price works over time. I think there's still an incredible amount of support for Bitcoin, and even more so coming forward. I mean, there's all different angles coming from every investment analyst in the world. Some, highly in favor of Bitcoin, some that express skepticism over what it's meant to do. But I've looked to the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general as a broader set of products. And I don't look, I'm not here to look at this for the next 6 months or the next 12 months of investment purposes. I think we're looking at a real revolution in terms of how the economy works, how money is used. How is money created? And that's kind of where this is all headed. So the short-term price fluctuations are just noise to me, and I think noise to a lot of investors. But thinking about it in terms of, things like Gemini Pay and other payment platforms, thinking about how programmable contracts could be built to create more efficiency in the markets in general, whether that's transactions, whether that's where people are creating value and creating, there was just reading an article this morning about SG and being able to tokenize their bond offerings using, simplified transactions based on blockchain technology to basically create those bonds and pay their coupons and have them be transferred and recorded on the blockchain. I think it's pretty powerful stuff. So yes, there is short-term outlook on it. People are definitely investing. People are obviously on Gemini are trading for the short term, but I think you have to look to the longer term to where this is headed, and I think that's really where the excitement lives.
A lot of excitement to get to, including in the Bitcoin breakdown. Before I do that, Jeanine, you know where I'm going next, because you guys came on the radar of a lot of the folks in the option space and indeed the derivative space when you partnered with SIBO to list the Bitcoin future. Obviously, we've seen a lot of new entrants and a lot of new developments in the crypto derivative space over that time. CME doing a little bit more volume these days over there on their options, other products starting to filter in, other venues starting to do a lot more paper on their crypto derivatives. So, our audience wants to know, Jeanine, what is Gemini's plans? What are you guys looking forward to for the future when it comes to all things crypto derivatives?
Well, you're just going to have me back because I don't have anything I'm going to comment on right now. But, it's definitely stuff that's on our mind. We are superbly aware of the other players in the space, some of the things that they're offering, some products that have been successful and some that haven't. And we're trying to think about what makes sense for us, what makes sense for our customers, where are we seeing unmet demand in the marketplace, especially in terms of a robust, reliable, and trusted product. And I think that's where our sweet spot lives. So we're definitely, listening and looking a lot in this space, but we'll have to talk about it again at a future point.
We will do that indeed, but you've courageously offered to stay on throughout the entire show as we keep on rolling right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do exactly what it says in the title. We break down all the price action in the world of the world's leading digital asset, a.k.a. Bitcoin. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had a chance to break it down. Now, we were, of course, off last week for the Memorial Day holiday here in the U.S., so a couple of weeks' worth of action to break down for you. Coming into Showtime, the net 2-week-on movement post-halving here hasn't exactly been blowing the doors off. Coming into Showtime, we saw Bitcoin down ever so slightly, down about 56, almost 57 handles from where it was last show. Still not that far away from that 9,600 level, which is pretty close to where it was on our last program. Let's break down all the vol and the SKEW and all that fun stuff. A lot of this is brought to you courtesy of our friends over there at SKEW.com. Maybe we'll sprinkle in a little bit from our friends over there at Genesis as well. They were just on the program a few weeks ago as well. In fact, they put out the most recent edition of their volatility newsletter, breaking down some interesting things about all things volatility. Check it out if you haven't done so already. I know a lot of you subscribed after listening to their appearance on the program a couple of weeks ago. Looking at the realized vol front first, which is, of course, the actual volatility that has been exhibited in the marketplace. The 1 month realized vol down quite a bit. It was down about 29% from last show. We were hovering right around 99% on our last show. Now it's at about 70. So post-halving, we're seeing a lot of that vol coming out of the space. 1 year, pretty much unched. You kind of expect that's a much longer frame of reference. The 30-day implied, which is, of course, the level of volatility that the options are actually pricing in the marketplace, also down substantially, down to about 66%. It was 90% on our last show. Again, that's not entirely surprising. The halving was a big event that was popping off right around the time of our last program there. And that's, of course, event risk. You're going to see that priced into any traditional derivative type product. Could be an earnings call, could be a crop report, whatever the underlying is. There's event risk baked in. Once that event happens, unless there's a surprising outcome, you're going to see that vol come in, and that's pretty much exactly what we're seeing out here in Bitcoin realized and implied volatility. Let's look out at the options volume out there. Let's start on the leading platform of Deribit, even though there has been some surprises on the volume front over the past couple of weeks. The big day out there on Deribit was actually the 29th of May. They did about 156 million worth of notional out there. The 28th, and also an active day, about 110 million out there. Let's parse some of the big options trades we saw going up on their platform, again, on those active days of the 29th. That's where the big prints mostly went up. Looks like we saw the June 11,000 and July 11,000 and 14,000 calls going up, as well as the June 10,000 calls going up 600 times a piece for the June and 500 times for the July. Not at the same time, so it doesn't look like it was a roll, but a similarly sized paper around the same time. That was done when Bitcoin was at about 93.73 out there. So some interesting and pretty sizable verticals out there for Deribit. Not a lot lighting it up out there today. Out there, looks like the 9,500 calls in June are the biggest print, with not quite 400 contracts going up on Deribit today. But we're going to bump CME up a little bit here just because there has been so much paper out there over the course of the past week. I mean, we've been saying for a while now, CME volume kind of anemic and not really living up to what the hype everyone had around the launch of their options. This week, a little bit of a different story. The June and July verticals were lighting it up over here, particularly on Thursday, the 28th. We saw, looks like about 200 of the June 11,000, 13,000 vertical going up out there, as well as about 500 of the July 11,000, 13,000 verticals out there. So 1,000 contracts in one and about 400 in the other. So a pretty active day. That's going to bump up the CME OI quite a bit. May call open interest now at CME about 1,850 contracts. June about 2,300, and July back on the board in a pretty sizable way with about 1,000 contracts open out there as well. So CME, I should say, coming online pretty aggressively out there. You know, Jeannie, before I keep rolling with some of these other products and other interesting breakdowns, we kind of touched on it earlier in the crypto hot seat, but I'm curious. I know you're looking a little bit farther ahead in terms of product front and the payment front over there at Gemini. But one of the largest questions we've seen of Bitcoin of the last year really was, how is it going to perform into, and perhaps more importantly, coming out of the big halving? And now we are on the other side of that. We are starting to see what's happening. And so far, it's been kind of a heck of a lot of nothing net movement-wise. Has that kind of surprised you overall, that we're seeing maybe a little bit of uncertainty coming out of the halving in terms of where Bitcoin is heading going forward, Jeanine?
Yeah, I think I think so. I think I was expecting to see a little bit more of a bump, and it's kind of been all over the map at this point in terms of pricing, which is, kind of not surprising considering the circumstances that we're in, and it being a new and novel asset class at that. But yeah, I think that it's headed in the right direction if you kind of look at the trend line. But yes, the prices have been pretty volatile compared to where I think I expected them to just sort of have a smooth uptick coming out of the halving. But then again, all these things are priced in. The halving wasn't a surprise. So you would expect it's kind of been priced into the market for some time.
Yeah, certainly no surprises there. Pandemic, a little bit more surprising, but the halving, not so much out there. The results of it, and of course the post-halving kind of malaise, I guess you can call it, out there in the marketplace, maybe a little bit surprising to a lot of folks who were making very strident arguments that this is going to be the most bullish thing in the history of Bitcoin. Of course, we had others on the other side saying it was going to be very bearish post-halving. That's what makes the market interesting. But still, the fact that it hasn't really trended aggressively in either direction is somewhat interesting. Let's see what the SKEW is telling us out there. Of course, a lot of the answers are lurking out there. And the SKEW right now, calls are back in charge out there. The SKEW was about 10.2%, showing the puts were leading the dance on the last show 2 weeks ago. This time, about minus 5%. So that says the calls have swung back pretty firmly into the driver's seat. So again, maybe reflecting a little bit of post-halving optimism out there for the upside out here. The folks over there at Genesis also crunching the numbers in their volatility report. This is as of the 30th, so as of this weekend. They're looking at the short-dated 14-day options out there. They came to the same conclusion that they're much more symmetrical than they were just a few weeks ago, when Bitcoin was obviously very, very negatively skewed. And they mentioned also, the 30-day, so a little bit longer term than 1 month, starting to trend in the terms of the positive from an overall SKEW perspective out there. So looking at the SKEW, and again, if you dig a little bit farther, as we were just doing with some of the analytics from SKEW, funny talking about SKEW from SKEW.com, but that's where a lot of this data is coming from. They say if you dig a little bit farther in, which is kind of what we're just pointing out, that the call's a little bit leading the dance out there right now, which again, perhaps those of you looking for some sign of sentiment out there, perhaps that's the indicator. You're not going to find it if you're looking at the call to put out there in Bitcoin land, because it's pretty much a coin flip. It's right around 50-50. It's about 48% to the calls right now. So put's actually slightly leading the charge from an overall open interest perspective. That's down actually from about 62% not too long ago. So the OI, kind of a bit of a coin flip. That's, of course, not in terms of overall net volume-wise. That's a lot of OI adding to the charts since our last show. We saw a big spike out there, like you mentioned, in CME land. CME is starting to come alive these days from an overall, the futures have always been pretty active, but from an overall options perspective, starting to become much more of a relevant player out there. I mean, Deribit has dominated the tape for so long. Now looking at the open interest numbers, we're seeing a lot more fluidity out there, which is interesting, and certainly I think interesting to a lot of you out there who are looking for new venues to trade these products on. Deribit only about 77% of the OI out there right now. CME coming in at about number 2, 14%. Then we've got OKEX and LedgerX kind of tied for number 3 with about 4% of the overall open interest out there in Bitcoin options. So a big resurgence out there in overall CME OI. Let's look at the overall numbers really quickly. Deribit still the leader though, with about 888 million net notional out there in terms of open interest. Number 2, like I mentioned, behind them, CME, again, coming on strong. They've leapfrogged both LedgerX and OKEX. They were a distant fourth to those not too long ago, and now having leapfrogged both of them, those 2 large verticals this week, or I should say last week, really helping catapult them into a much higher level. 163 million total open interest out there now. Then we've got OKEX, number 3, 52 million. Number 4, LedgerX, 47 million. So those 2 still neck and neck. And bringing up the rear, yet again, we got BAKKT with about 66,000 contracts. If you're wondering where most of that OI is aggregated, it is in June. It's still the action, the excitement is out there. And it's in June contract with about 61,000 contracts really aggregated out there. Nothing else is even close. The next closest is September. So they like they like the quarterlies. They like June and like September. They like March. March obviously off the board now. So June is the next big spot in terms of where they're landing on the strike chain out there, where the action is. Obviously 7,000 and 10,000, they've been kind of the 2 magnets for a while. They're still leading the dance, but not by as much as they used to be. Now maybe perhaps reflecting some of that sentiment. We just talked about the verticals in CME. That's going to change that a little bit as well. And we're seeing the 11,000 strikes and 12,000 strikes now coming online as a result. So they're fairly close. They're hot on the heels of certainly the 7,000 strike, which is looking a little bit distant in the rear view mirror right now. So if you're looking again for maybe some sentiment, looking to the upside, some indicators, perhaps the growing interest in the 11,000 and 12,000 strikes, maybe what you're looking for out there. Let's look here at the futures really quickly over there on CME land. Fairly light volume today, not much going up out there, about 3,500 contracts. Friday was a little bit more active, about 9,000 contracts, and about 10,000 on Thursday over the rest of the week, a little bit lighter out there. But again, the futures have been doing well. The options are kind of where we're focusing our attention, and it has been a surprising week out there in terms of CME options volume. Not so much over there on the BAKKT land, our old friend, the BAKKT volume bot, crunching the numbers out there. The total volume, remember that BAKKT coin, the BAKKT contract, I should say, is really one contract, one coin. It's much more of a one-to-one. What you see is what you get type of contract. It's only 1,765 contracts, down 55%. And again, the open interest is about 10.1 million. That's actually up a little bit, up about 15% over there. So again, it's decent on the futures, not so much on the options over there on BAKKT land. Let's see what's going on in the rest of the crypto marketplace now. It is time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, welcome to the altcoin universe, a portion of the show where we break down everything outside of the number one digital asset out there, which is, of course, Bitcoin. And Jeanine, I love to bring on guests for this segment because they usually come armed with some esoteric portion of the crypto space out there, some altcoin that maybe we haven't heard of that's on their radar that is very interesting and intriguing to us. You kind of touched on a few that you were looking at over there at the top of the show, but I'm curious over there at Gemini, are there really any altcoin that are really dominating your tape or causing you guys to say, maybe there's some potential here that we could expand into? What are some of the altcoin that are on your radar there, Jeanine?
Yeah, so we definitely, we added 4 coins, that I mentioned, in April, and that's been a huge success for us. It's the first coins we've added since my first week at Gemini when we added Litecoin. So that was pretty exciting, and there's actually an incredible amount of, it's not like listing a new, option series. It's actually a lot of work to add a new coin in terms of the technical ads that go into the signing curve and everything else that makes it happen. So that was pretty exciting. We've added more coins on our platform. So we actually have 24 coins in our custody platform. But for Gemini, we adhere to a pretty strict set of regulations. So not all of those are available for trading because they haven't all been blessed by our regulator. But that being said, they are a pretty interesting set of products. I think even the ones that we've listed, Brave strikes me as particularly interesting in terms of how it works, what its purpose is. We were talking earlier about, moving further into crypto land and what are people doing with these interesting products. And I think, Brave and their basic attention token is a really great example of bringing value in a new way using blockchain technology to reward people that are watching advertisements and using the browser, to reward content providers for providing content on the platform, and for advertisers to be using in terms of payments to actually provide their advertising on the platform, sort of as its own ecosystem of micropayments in a space that can never be supported really with dollars. Not in any real way in terms of people actually holding and owning those assets on a transaction basis. So I think stuff like that is really, moving the whole crypto ecosystem forward with interesting projects that are actually really, in market today.
Yeah, I always find the altcoin universe segment to be one of the more fascinating for me. Obviously, Bitcoin gets all the headlines and all the love, and there's a lot of trading activity to parse and break down there, and that's where the lion's share of the interest lies out there. But we have great guests come on, and they brought great tokens that we weren't even aware of, gaming and utility tokens and all these other things out there that are floating around in the altcoin universe that usually, like you mentioned, have a very specific use case, which I think is very fascinating. You don't see that in the traditional financial space. So yeah, I always enjoy exploring all things going on here in the altcoin side of the universe. We probably could spend the whole rest of the show talking about these. Let's break down what the top 10 is out there. I think you're going to know where they are, listeners. There hasn't been a lot of fluctuation in the top 10 on the altcoin front since our last show. Number 1, of course, Bitcoin. Remember, take these market cap numbers with an overall pretty large grain of salt. The rankings, I think, are fairly reliable. The market cap, maybe not so much. Market cap, Bitcoin about 176 billion. Number 2, good old ETH at about 26.5 billion. Number 3, XRP, right around 9 billion. Number 4, Tether, about 6.8 billion. Number 5, Bitcoin Cash, right around 4.4 billion. Number 6, Bitcoin SV, right around 3.6 billion. Number 7, our old friend Litecoin. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. It rallied into that. That was a great example of the halving really driving a lot of interest, a lot of volume, a lot of price action. Then it kind of fell off ever since then. It's kind of been languishing at the bottom half of our top 10. A lot of folks hoping that doesn't play out for Bitcoin out there. So far, the last couple of weeks with the price action haven't exactly been encouraging, but maybe the options SKEW will provide a little bit of light there. Litecoin number 7, right about 3 billion $3 billion out there market cap. Number 8, Binance Coin, about 2.7 billion. Number 9, EOS, about 2.5 billion, and round out the top 10. Once again, Tezos locked at that number 10 spot, right about 2 billion. So head on out to the number 2 overall altcoin in terms of market cap. That is ETH. Coming into Showtime. Bit of a decent run out here for ETH since our last show. About 26 handles coming into Showtime. Was a little bit shy of 239 out there. It was right around 212 on our last show. Let's break down some of the analytics out here. Again, these coming at you courtesy of our friends over there in SKEW.com land. 30-day realized in ETH ticked down 79%, but nowhere near as much as we saw, the vol coming off aggressively out there in Bitcoin. The vol pretty much unched out there in the 30-day out there in ETH. 1 year realized, literally unched. That's kind of what you expect, hovering right around the 106% level out there. Interesting stuff out here in ETH land. 30-day, again, implied this is the level of vol the options are actually pricing in. That's down a little bit more. It's down about 10 points from about 87% down to about 77%. What is interesting, what has seen an uptick is, of course, the volume, the ADV, up pretty strong to about 7.5 million worth of notional a day, up from about 4.5 million on our last show. So a strong uptick in overall ETH options volume. The biggest spike coming into today's show was actually today. Today, coming into showtime, you saw about 24 million worth of ETH notional on the tape. So that's a pretty strong day. The biggest spike we saw in our last show was 8 million. And then before that was on the 30th with about 20 million. So a big uptick going on out there in ETH land. We have seen some interesting changes to the ETH infrastructure, and that's obviously driving a lot of volume as a result. The SKEW, 30-day SKEW, down to about a little over 4%. It was about 10.5% on our last show. So we're seeing that coming in a little bit out there as well. Interesting stuff out there in overall ETH options land. Before we hop out of ETH options, let's look at the overall open interest out here. Last show, we were at about 73 million. This show, actually, about 128 million, so up a decent amount, actually, out here overall on all things ETH open interest out here. So a little shot in the arm out here for the number 2 overall altcoin, which is ETH. Ripple effectively unched from where it was this time last show. Our old friend XRP seems like to hang out around that 20 strike of late and pretty much has been doing so net at least for the last couple of weeks. So all you out there who are looking for some sort of direction one way or the other for XRP, not getting it this week. A Bitcoin Cash down slightly about 2 handles. We're seeing Bitcoin SV off a wee bit more, off about 6, almost 6.5 handles from this time last show. But it wouldn't be a crypto rundown without you guys. So without further ado, let's get to some of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Questions segment. You guys have questions? Who doesn't when it comes to the crypto space these days? We endeavor to answer them over here on this segment. First off, Andrew chiming in asking, why do you guys always break down realized and implied volatility on the program? Isn't implied more important because that is directly related to option pricing? I think something more important in the vol space is obviously a subjective thing. Obviously, implied is what you're actually trading, so we make sure we put that out there for you because that is important. You're right. But we always talk, if you listen to our Volatility Views program, for example, Andrew, and anyone else out there who likes some of those other programs, maybe hasn't had a chance to check them out. We always break down the vol landscape in terms of what's being priced out there versus what's actually being exhibited in the marketplace. That's usually called your risk premium out there. And usually implied is going to be more because you never know what the future holds. You have to build in a little bit of a buffer in there. When realized spikes above implied, something crazy is happening out there. But we give you both of those, Andrew, so you can have some sort of frame of reference for when you're analyzing the space. You can say, here's what the market is pricing in, and here's what has actually been delivered, what it has actually exhibited from an overall volatility perspective. So that's why we give you both, to arm you guys with a little bit more information. This show is all about arming you guys with information. So we don't just give you a vol number in a vacuum. We want to give you a context. That's why we give you both. All right, next up here, let's go to this one from Jason Heck. He wants to know, do you guys expect any more major entrants into the crypto derivatives markets anytime soon? Well, luckily, I have Janine on with me. She's our market structure expert here on the crypto side. Janine, we were just talking about this earlier in the show. I was teasing you guys about getting back into the crypto derivative space, but obviously this space has seen a lot of flux even since the last time you guys were on with us back in September. I touched on earlier how CME not doing a lot of paper, and some people scratching their chins around that. Then, of course, now doing a lot more paper just in the past week, so maybe a little bit of a resurgence there. We're seeing a lot of back and forth. OKEX coming on the scene pretty aggressively and actually doing a fair amount of options paper out there. LedgerX creeping up there as well. Deribit still going strong out there. There's open questions about what's going on with ErisX as a result of the Schwab TD merger. So there's a lot of interesting irons in the fire. You have your finger on the pulse of the crypto exchange space. Do you have any hints, any nuggets you want to give our listener here, Jason, about maybe any new players you're expecting to come on the scene anytime soon?
Yeah, I don't. It's a difficult question to answer from a Gemini perspective, only because we don't really talk about our future plans in advance. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity in the crypto derivative space. Many are overseas right now. I think you can look at those markets, you can see the demand that is pent up behind them and really inaccessible to the U.S. markets. So I think that the opportunity we see is how do you bring to the U.S. In the regulated environment products that might appeal to customers that are having to go overseas to get them today. And that's really the challenge, working within the current regulatory structure. bringing those products here. I think you will constantly see new products be invented outside of the U.S. shores. I think you'll see some consolidation over time, especially as international jurisdictions start to develop their own regulatory frameworks, and that creates some pressure on these platforms that are largely unregulated today. And as we know, regulation is expensive, so that does create some pressure on those platforms. But yeah, I've actually watched much of this develop over the last couple of years, and it's really fascinating to watch these derivative platforms grow, increase in size, and really explode. So it's something that I think they'll continue to grow, and there'll be new platforms coming to market over time, and people will sort of start to figure out, which are reputable, which are not, which are regulated, which are robust in terms of the technology, and in the end, you'll see a couple of them really move ahead of everybody else. But I think that'll take some time to get there.
You brought up the R word, Jeanine, regulations. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to throw my own question into the mix here, in addition to the listeners, Jeanine, because that's a topic that obviously crypto and regulation are inescapable, particularly here in the U.S. You can't really talk one without the other. You've had a variety of different players in that space on the program over the year, including, of course, folks in the SEC and others trying to give some insight into what they're seeing on the regulatory front. Obviously, these are somewhat unprecedented times. We are still in the midst of a pandemic and also other recent events spiraling to maybe take some of the attention away from the regulating of new products down there in D.C. I'm curious, Jeanine, maybe leading into all this pandemic popping off, and maybe anecdotally what you're hearing now as things are hopefully trying to return to some semblance of normal. Were you getting the sense that some of the ice was starting to thaw over there on the regulatory front, that the U.S. was becoming a little bit more friendly on the regulatory side, or is that still maybe a lot more heavy lifting to do?
Regulation changes pretty slowly. It doesn't move at the pace, I think, that innovators and entrepreneurs would like it to move at. That being said, I think it's all moving in the right direction. I think there's been so many topics that have hit Washington really hard over the last 12 months, starting with Libra, and just cascading down from there in terms of what regulators have had to learn and really come up to speed with very quickly. So I think that along with the education comes understanding, and understanding will help develop good frameworks for crypto to operate within. Whether that is what constitutes good control for custody, or what does it mean to have a valid price that an ETF can be based off of, or is there enough regulated marketplaces in the future space or in the spot markets to allow for some innovative products. We've seen a lot of movement forward in the past couple of months. Gemini serves as one of the price constituents and as the custodian for a Canadian closed-end fund called the Bitcoin Fund, which has been created by 3IQ in Canada. And we worked with the Canadian regulators extensively to help them understand what custody means for cryptocurrency. And I think there's a lot of meaningful progress being done. When Washington will sort of come out and wave a flag and say, yes, this is great, this is fine. I don't think we're going to get to that point. I think there's cryptocurrencies, there's security tokens, there's derivative products. There's so much that in the U.S. needs to be looked at, and also really understood on how it's going to be regulated. Is it going to continue to be state by state? Will it become a federal regulator, and for what types of products? And I think that's going to take some time. For Gemini, we've been trying to work to create an SRO for crypto exchanges to basically do what we want to see happen in the marketplace, which is meaningful oversight over the cryptocurrency exchanges. So we have a group called the Virtual Commodity Association, which is a consortium of a couple of exchanges working to further regulation, self-regulation for our industry. And I think all these things move the industry in the right direction, and it will come. It's not going to come overnight, but I do think people are really hard at work at this and are getting there. So that's my 2 bits on where we stand with regulation.
Optimistic look, a rare optimistic look at regulation. I like it. Let's keep the optimism flowing here. Let's wrap it up. A little bit of love here from EKLE54. Great handle out there, EKLE. He says, great show. Please keep talking crypto derivatives since no one else seems to understand this market. Stay safe in Chicago. Yeah, that latter portion, much more prevalent and prescient of late. Tune into the Option Block program if you missed it, listeners. I broke down a little bit about what happened over here over the weekend here. Our studio, obviously, right in the midst of all the fun going on over here. But thanks for that, EKLE, and everyone else who's been sending in similar sentiments. We appreciate you guys enjoying the show. Glad to see you guys are discovering it. Obviously, we have a lot of content going back for a long time, but the crypto edition is a relatively new one for us. We're glad to see a lot of you discovering, a lot of you newcomers to the network coming through the Crypto Rundown program. Maybe wouldn't normally traditionally check out an options-oriented program, but you're coming from the crypto lens, and then we've led you now to the dark side of all things options. So we're glad to see EKLE and everyone else out there, similar sentiments. Thanks for that. We appreciate you guys even more than you know. You keep this show churning along week in and week out. All right, unfortunately, listeners, that music means we come to the end of another epic journey through the world of all things crypto derivatives. I want to thank my guest, Jeanine HIGHTOWER-SELLITTO from Gemini. And Jeanine, if our folks are intrigued, they want to maybe reach out and discover more about all the things we talked about there, whether it's a Gemini Dollar, Gemini Pay, the new Samsung wallet, or maybe, Jeanine, I want to take this opportunity to leave our audience with a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a tease of what you guys have up your sleeves over there at Gemini. Now is the time, madam. The floor is yours.
Well, if you want to know anything that we've got going on at Gemini now in the future, check us out at Gemini.com. It'll link you to our app. It'll link you to our custody products. It'll link you to all the new tokens that we've added. And certainly as we have new announcements, you can be alerted to them on our blog as well. So stay in touch. Find us. We're at Gemini.com.
There you go, Gemini.com to learn more about all the things we just talked about. Gemini Pay, Gemini Dollar, the front end, the back end, all the good stuff, the wallet, everything else you want to learn about. Gemini.com is the place to go. And on behalf of Miss Jeanine and myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live, for sending in those questions. Keep them coming, for reviewing the show on all the platforms that you love it on. Keep those coming as well. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you back here next week for more of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.